Bill Okero was known for a long time as one of the more active and erudite members of the Kenyan Parliament, where he served as MP for Mandera Central. However, for the past few years, he has quietly been building a business in the oil industry. Kero is the CEO of Trojan International Limited and is putting the skills gained as a legislator to good use in the cut and thrust of the oil sector.
All right, thanks for speaking with us. We know you as a former legislator, you represented the people of Mandera Central, also a commentator on policy issues. But how did you get into the oil business?
Well, the oil business is a business. I think after I left Parliament in 2008, I thought of concentrating on business. I have been in the past in the professional services firm, where I'm a partner in two of the one audit firm and a share registrar's firm. But I thought of getting into some business, and we looked around, and I thought this industry perhaps was more promising. So that's how we got into it.
It looks like an industry that is made for the big boys, mostly multinational firms, also because of the amount of investment that is needed. What sort of business model do you have as Trojan International?
No, it's true. This is an industry that's highly capital intensive. On the other hand, I think what we looked at is the gradual disengagement or disinvestment by some of the majors. And secondly, the fact that this economy is expanding, not only locally but regionally. And any expanding economy will require more energy, more petroleum, more oil, and so forth. So we thought it's probably the most appropriate time to position ourselves for this industry because of the growth of the economies in this region. And our strategy has been largely to go for the markets that are not served by the multinationals locally, and some of the markets in the region that we believe, and based on our own assessment, were not adequately served really by the companies. And we have in mind countries like Rwanda, countries like eastern parts of DRC, and where there was a lot of potential, so that's really how we looked at it. And this is our main strategy, was really to go into those areas that we think were not adequately served by the existing companies.
Over the tender system, or rather, you mentioned the open tendering system, which is, some people say, open to manipulation and largely ineffective, and in some cases even inefficient. I don't know what your thoughts are on the way Kenya imports fuel.
I think my assessment of the OTS is a very efficient system, really, in terms of the way it's being done. When the oil companies are asked to participate, indicate what quantities of oil they want to import for next month, and those figures are aggregated, then a tender is sent out to all the oil marketing companies. Then the deadline is that you submit the tender, say at 2:30, at 2:15, and 15 minutes later everyone is waiting there and the tenders are opened. So it really does not leave any room for manipulation. I think concerns probably others expressed is with regards to the participation, that any of the 45, or the 50 oil marketing companies can actually participate regardless of the size or capacity. And I think probably but otherwise I think in terms of the integrity of the process, I find it quite remarkable, really, the way they are doing it.
All right, the other aspect of the oil industry which is right now under debate is the introduction of a fuel pricing formula, and which is the first step towards really price controls, and which many people say has been a spectacular flop. It's not working. Our fuel is more expensive now.
I don't think so. I think if ERC was not controlling the prices, I believe the price would be much higher.
Really?
Much higher, because of the simple reason that, one, the ERC's formula is based on the past month's average. So if today the oil prices are at, say, $120 a barrel, and last month it was at 100, and you're basing the ERC formula on last month's average, the Platts, the market price last month, then what happens is that today we're importing and exporting. We're selling a product at yesterday's prices. So I think it's really, and again, it's limiting those costs that would be included in the build-up of the cost that marketers would normally have taken. For example, I don't think in terms of the exchange rate, in the last review, they were looking at 84 shillings, so, and today it's 90. So whatever we have been importing the last 1 week, all the products I'm getting this week, we're paying for them at almost 88, 89. And we're selling them at an ERC formula that's based on 83. So we're making losses. Thirdly, I think they also have capped the margins so that the competitiveness really, and what happens is, and that's critical this particular time, because what happened is when the international oil prices went up, the volumes or the quantities that are being imported by all marketing companies declined because of the, obviously, you are getting half the product for the same amount of money you were getting last year. And that would have created limited stocks, and the demand would have remained higher. And what would happen normally, then the prices would have gone up. People would have gone for more margins. But now the margins are also capped. So the fact that the margins are capped, the exchange rates and some of the costs are not picked up adequately, and the fact that they're using last month's average, all makes it much more better for the consumer, really, that ERC controls it. But in a situation where there is an upward movement generally of international oil prices and the shilling's devaluation, I think it would be foolhardy to expect the price control to actually. What we have is not in essence a control, in the sense that you actually say the price must be capped at a particular level. That happens in some countries, and what they do is they fix a price, say the limit or the ceiling is 100 shillings. If it's 100 shillings, then anything over and above would be adjusted in the tax or the fuel tax or any of the other government charges. That way, then you're actually capping or controlling the price. But this one is really different. I mean, you have to adjust by putting into, I think it's a process of basically validating the cost buildup. That's what ERC is doing, to make sure that consumers are not unnecessarily charged and exorbitant profits. I think that's essentially what they're doing.
With the thinning margins in the oil industry and the consumers always complaining about this, is oil still a profitable business in this country?
I don't think. The last 6 months, I believe that many oil companies actually are having serious crisis in terms of profitability. We are not making profits in the last 6 months. One, because the volumes and the quantities we're importing has declined significantly because of the high international oil prices. Second, the constraints in the storage and transport system means you also can only access a limited amount of products. And again, because of those constraints, the process of payment, of the shippers, the process of payment of KRA, that has been reduced to 10 days. You cannot hold the stocks for more than 2 weeks in the system, and all this has really made it extremely difficult, because what happens is then you have to get finances at a very high cost, and that is really impacted significantly. Thirdly, I think the exchange rate, because every time you import in dollars and you're selling shillings, so you have to convert the shillings again into dollars. So the whole week we were buying dollars at 9. Yesterday we were buying dollars at 91, 92. And probably when we imported that product, it was at 80 something, and we sold it at 80 something. And today you have to convert, so you lose about 4 or 5 shillings. So it's becoming it's the worst time I've seen in the last 3 years we've been in this business, both in terms of the marketing and in terms of the profitability, really. And many companies actually bleeding in terms of their bottom line.
Okay, and finally, with Uganda discovering oil, hopefully they begin commercially exploiting it soon. Does that mean probably that would be a good thing for us, because we may not have to depend internationally on crude?
I think so. I think the Ugandan government has actually invited the East African community countries to participate in the development of the oil sector in Uganda, so that they can be stakeholders, for example, in the construction of the refinery and so forth. And I think they are looking at long-term sharing of some of the investment costs that are related to the production And I think they have already engaged these countries and they're in discussions. So what perhaps would happen is Uganda exporting to these regions, and our pipeline system, instead of us pumping that way, reversing it. And I think this is one of the reasons why I would find it highly unlikely that SR and the government would invest in the Kenya petroleum refinery in Mombasa. This is why 2 years after they have bought it, 50% SR is not willing to proceed on investment, in spite of indicating that they are going to do so when they bought the company. And I think that uncertainty is the main reason. So I think, in my view, because of the huge potential that this country has for fuel, it is important that this government takes this early move to try and be a partner with Uganda so that we can get fuel at concessional prices. This is what many countries do. You get into a concession, government to government, and you get the price at much cheaper than the spot market prices in the Gulf. And perhaps this is something that Sudan was trying to do a few years ago to this country. But again, I think it's because of the type of the product and the level of refining that perhaps it makes it difficult for the same product in Sudan being used in this country. But I think it's important that the government invests in that development in Uganda.
All right, Mr. Kero, many thanks for speaking with us. Asante sana.